Hi.
Wait. Hello, good morning.
Hi. Happy birthday, Lois. Happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you for remembering.
My
We
last year in
celebrated it. I celebrated your birthday. I drank to
got
you
dressed
on
up.
several occasions.
Your,
Yes.
your special.
But did you have a piece of pie? Because it was pie day.
Yes, I did not.
Oh,
That's one thing I missed out on during the day. I had a piece of probably every other kind of confectionery, but
I'm,
not pie.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah. So,
Are you supposed to overdo it?
No, no. I mean, there is a mitzvah to have a Suda, so I guess that's more than you would regularly have, but you're not supposed to overdo it. In fact, Rav Aaron Soloveitchik made it one of his missions to teach us that you're never supposed to overdo it under any circumstance. It is not the way of the Torah to ever overdo it, including with alcohol. And so, yeah.
it was strange because I was drinking a little, but Shabbos was coming where I have wine.
I know. This is it's
Yeah.
a very weird thing. In
Right.
Israel, in Jerusalem, like the first time I remember having this, was when we were married. It was like early in our marriage. I remember that. And the thing is that we had it at least twice. I think we had it also the last year that we were in Israel, like in 95, I think it might have been. And so in Jerusalem, it's better because the Suda is on Sunday. You have 3 days of Purim. You have some things that happen on Friday. You have some things that happen on Shabbos, and you have some things. The fast you have on Thursday, I think, maybe. The fast, we must have had the fast on Thursday.
Right.
Then you have something on Friday. Then you have some things on Shabbos. Then you have some things on Sunday. So they call it Purim Mishulosh. That it has 3 parts, but the fast technically should have also. It really is 4 days in a row. Anyways, but the Suda is on Sunday, so you don't have to worry about that Friday Suda. But
wait, when is the suit on Sunday?
When you're in
in
Jerusalem.
Oh, when
Jerusalem,
you're in Jerusalem.
right?
Yeah.
They push the Suda off till Sunday.
Oh, it's a walled city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they push
Yes.
it off till Sunday, and so then you don't have this problem. But here we've had this problem a couple times. Supposedly it's not happening together until 2045 again, till 2045.
Good.
So that's a while that we don't have to worry about it.
That means also Pesach
Yeah.
won't fall. Good.
I will
Good.
say there's some parts to the Pesach thing that I like better. Erev Pesach is a weird time mostly, but this Erev Pesach, since it's Shabbos, you're forced to sort of do things most things before Shabbos. And
Right.
so Shabbos, although there are some people, I remember our last year in Israel, the yeshiva, Tzipi and I had it in the yeshiva with the yeshiva guys because we were the dorm parents at Or Sameach. And so
Wow.
so we had it Erev Pesach at the yeshiva itself. And so we did this thing, even though the Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Nata Schiller, may he live long and in good health, he was there also, but he ate separately. He didn't eat with us. We ate with the students. So we did this thing that has become common amongst yeshiva people, when something like this happens, where there's a where Yom Tov is after Shabbos, to have 2 meals, one after another. So you daven early in the morning because you want to still be able to have chometz. So you daven early in the morning, and you eat your first meal at something like, early, like 9:30 in the morning or something. You
That's
eat your
my Suda.
your
No.
first Suda, your first Suda.
Oh, your first Suda.
And then, so what you do is you just wash, and maybe you have fish. Then you bench, you walk around a little bit, and then you start your third meal, your shalosh shudas. And then you have what you would have had as your main Shabbos meal for shalosh shudas. So that way you got in the required meals early enough so that you're still hungry by the time the Seder happens. So otherwise, the feeling is if you had a regular shalosh shudas, you're not going to be hungry for dinner, even though your Seder doesn't start before like 8 o'clock. There's no way your Seder starts before 8 o'clock, like on a Motzoi Shabbos. But still, there are people that insisted on doing it. The Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Schiller, thought this is a newfangled crazy thing, and meals weren't supposed to have this way, and so he didn't abide by it. But so I don't know what's going to happen in Israel. I have a funny feeling that we're going to do that early meals thing, and it will be.
I remember with Linus when Mr. Irwin Parker, who was a story unto himself, he did everything in the show. I mean, just all the jobs that nobody wanted. He was the most popular man on the show. He never ran for or was elected to any public office. His motto was that there's way too many chiefs and far too few Indians. And
Nice.
So everything he does. So one time he had heart problems, so he asked me to run shalosh shudas. So I did, but I remember I had 2 of them where they fell out on
before the holiday. Oh,
right before shot, and it was a thing. We got everything done. Not everything. I don't know how hungry we were or everything, but
right.
we got all the meals.
A lot of herring.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
shalosh shudas and shuls. I mean, our shul, they go all out for shalosh shudas, and a lot of people come back for it. Even a lot of the wives come back for it. But in most shuls, shalosh shudas is a couple of rolls and some gefilte fish or a little tuna fish or
herring. I'm telling you.
And herring. Yeah.
Always.
In Milwaukee, they had beer. I remember this growing up. They had beer, and I'm pretty sure it was Leinenkugels because I remember the Indian symbol on the beer. I'm pretty sure it was I'm assuming Leinenkugels went back to those times because pretty sure. But that was one of the funny things. I remember the smell of beer and the old men.
From Milwaukee, you ought to know.
I know. But and it was basically old men, but I loved the tunes. They were, and I still remember the tunes to this day. And Rabbi Twersky, as the shul moved on and it started to be more and more younger people at shalosh shudas, so there became there were more zmiras, but I still remember Yoim zelis oirav v'simcha, and it was always, there were certain people that were always designated to start that zemer, like that zemer. There was a Mr. Cohn and a few other guys. They were all characters, and I loved. My kids cannot stand any of those tunes, and therefore we never get to sing them. But
I was told by my father that he used to go when he was born in Yerushalayim and everything, but he said that that there was something about it. It was a very Kabbalistic sort of thing. And
Yeah.
the melody, everything were all, it was a very deep.
Devotional. There was one of the Rosh Yeshivas at Mishkan Torah, which was the yeshiva. Originally, I was at a yeshiva called Itri, and then the American Rabbaim. It was a combined American-Israeli yeshiva. Then the American Rabbaim all left and formed a place called Mishkan Torah, which everybody called Splitry, because it was from Itri and then it split off. So, and that was the yeshiva where they brought in Ramosha Shapiro. Yes, so one of the Rosh Yeshivas, his name was Moshe Rum, Rabbi Moshe Rum of blessed memory. He was from Belgium, and he was a very proper, dignified man in everything he did. And he told us that Shalosh Shudas is this sublime moment. It's like two lovers who know that they're going to be separated. And that time is usually just quiet time together. You just want quiet time together. You're just spending your last minutes together. And he said that's what Shalosh Shudas is. That's why there's not as much talking during Shalosh Shudas and more singing. This would fit the sublime tunes also, those Kabbalistic tunes.
Did you do Havdalah in the shul?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Everybody had a Havdalah in the shul, I imagine.
Yeah, I guess so.
But everybody makes Havdalah again at home.
Unless they don't have anybody at home, then they.
Oh, then.
Oh, yeah. What if they don't have anybody at home?
Well, you've already.
Let's say they're single. We have some people that are single, so they have their Havdalah in shul. They don't make it again. You only make it again if there's somebody at home who didn't hear Havdalah.
Right.
Okay.
That's technically why they make Havdalah in shul. Technically, for people who wouldn't have any other place to hear it.
I see.
I don't remember if we finished the Pegel one. No, I think we did, yeah, because at the end of Pegel, this is the place where the Rambam highlights that just because something is learned from a Gzera Shava doesn't make it less biblical. Again, he's coming up with a list of the 613 mitzvahs, partially because he wasn't satisfied with the other lists. One of the lists he wasn't satisfied was called the Halachos Gedolos. The author of the Halachos Gedolos is called the Baal Halachos Gedolos, or the Bahag. And he included in his list things like Hanukkah candles and things which are rabbinic. And the Rambam had said, these 613 mitzvahs all have to be biblical. That's why, that's one of the basic criteria for this list. So you can't be including rabbinic stuff in it. Yet there is this confusion about things that are learned from these midrashic principles. So let's say you're applying Kal v'chomer, or you're applying, come in. Hi, I love you. I know you don't love this when I'm in the midst of it, but I'm gonna. Also, by the way, tonight, so we're just clear. You're going, but you're not. You're going.
I'm not going to
You're coming back?
Yeah.
Oh, so let's go together. Okay. You the man. You don't mind. You have just given me such relief. You don't know it.
Yes, they go together.
Okay.
That'd be fun. What time, do you know what time that?
It says 6:45 is dinner, 5:45 is cocktail. So I say we aim for 6:45.
It's for dinner, so we leave like 5 or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right. So yeah. So the thing is that there are these. There are the things that are learned from, let's say, Kal V'chomer or Gzera Shava. They are really a hybrid because their source is in the Torah, but their derivation is through the minds of rabbis. They're applying this technique, which is part of the oral law, but their choice of how to apply it is still involves some creative input from them. Even a Gzera Shava, which this is, which means an intertextual connection. So you have one word, one place, and another word, another place. So even this Gzera Shava, the intertextual connection, can involve. So we say about a Gzera Shava that it has to be, you had to have gotten it as part of a tradition. You have to have a Masorah for a Gzera Shava. This is not something that somebody can just find on their own. You had to have a tradition that there was a Gzera Shava. And Rabbi Breitowitz, when he talks about Gzera Shava, he makes the point that essentially what that means is you're saying this is something that came all the way back to essentially Moshe, because you got it from your teacher. Where did your teacher get it from? He couldn't make it up, so he had to get it from his teacher. Where did his teacher get it from? He couldn't make it up, so it had to come from his teacher. So again, Gzera Shava, which is an intertextual connection. There's a word in this section, there's a word in that section, and now you're saying that the halacha is learned from one section to the other. So a Gzera Shava has to be something you got from as part of a tradition. And yet you see, even in Daf Yomi today, we had an example of this where there are two people who have a Gzera Shava, but they're getting a different result from their Gzera Shava. So how, and there's people who learn Gzera Shavas and people who don't learn it. So what you'd have to say is not everybody has this tradition. Only some people have it, and they become sort of the bearers of this tradition. But even they may have a tradition that there's a Gzera Shava, but not have all the details, all the data about how it works. So they may have a tradition that there's a Gzera Shava here between this word and that word, but they may not have what you're supposed to learn from it. So they're still using creative input, and that's allowed because they had the basic tradition. So in the Gemara, a lot of times the use of Gzera Shava or Kal V'chomer or certain other methodologies is called Midivrei Sofrim, from the words of the either scribes or the counters. So Midivrei Sofrim means it's rabbinic. That's how you usually translate it. And yet, this thing that they're saying is Midivrei Sofrim could still be biblical. This is confusing because the Gemara is using language that makes it sound like it's rabbinic, but they're treating it like it's biblical. That happens in these cases where you're using this kind of methodology. What they mean to say is, and this is what the Rambam is trying to say here, it is still biblical. It is still biblical. It has the status of biblical law. He's counting this as one of the 613 mitzvahs. That's how biblical it is. Even though he made the point that you don't include rabbinic stuff like Hanukkah candles, he's including this because he's saying, and he has said this in other places, that the use of these mechanisms is still called biblical. Even though there's rabbinic involvement and maybe even a bit of creativity, it is still called biblical. So it ends up that you can manufacture new Torah using these techniques. It is possible, not with Gzera Shava, because Gzera Shava required a tradition going back, but let's say Kal V'chomer. Let's say you're using the principle of Kal V'chomer, which is majority, that's how they often translate it. But Kal V'chomer is where you have two things. If I say something is true about this one, it's going to for sure be true about this one. So let's say you have a small apple and a big apple. So they're similar because they're both apples, but one is small and one is large. So if I said that small apple is too much for me to eat in one sitting, then for sure the big apple is going to be too much for me to eat in one sitting. Or if I wanted to relate it to a halacha, I would say that small apple is it's large enough to require an after blessing. So if that small apple is large enough to require an after blessing, then the big apple is for sure large enough. That type of reasoning is called a Kal V'chomer. Now, it's possible that you're the first person to come up with that Kal V'chomer. Now, nowadays you never see people doing Kal V'chomers anymore. I don't know when it exactly stopped. It may have stopped in the time of the Talmud already, but whenever it was that they were still doing Kal V'chomers, it's possible that a person's coming up with a Kal V'chomer that has never been thought of before, or at least not known from before, which would mean that it's new, and yet it still has the status of Torah, which would mean that via these principles, Rabbi Shmuel identifies 13. We know there's more than 13 because the Talmud uses other ones that are not in his list of 13. But so these methodologies, some of them could generate new Torah, which it's sort of weird to think of it that way, but it's new Torah is coming to light that was not known before. Now, you could say that anytime there's a term called chidush. Chidush means that it's new. So you could say that those are also so somebody came up with some kind of novel understanding of the Torah, and it's quickly accepted. Let's say it could be a responsa of Rav Moshe Feinstein, or a clever kind of understanding of Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler or Rebbe Chonon Wasserman. There was some kind of question that came up, and they came up with a clever kind of resolution, which seems completely new. So that phenomena is called chidush, and that itself it means the same kind of thing. In other words, this is new Torah that's come to light. The one difference between that and what we're talking about is that this is an actual law. There's a new law that is emerging that from these things, whereas those tend to be understanding a principle underlying a law, or understanding some principle that's not halachic, but it could be halachic, but it's just understanding why the law is like it is. It's not necessarily generating new law. But here, you could generate new law. Now, in our case, they're not generating new law in the Pigo case because they're using Zera Shava. And again, we said Zera Shava requires a tradition from before. So this is not a chidush, this law. It's not novel because it was known in the chain of the oral law already that this law exists. It would have to be that way. But with Kal V'chomer, you could end up with a new legal result, a new law that was not known before. Technically.
Rabbi, where
Yeah.
where does halacha l'Moshe Sinai fit in this whole discussion?
Right. So different people have different understandings of that term. That's one version. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai is one version, and then there's another language which I have to remember in a second. It just left me. But there's another language that the Rambam distinguishes between them. I have seen usages of the term halacha l'Moshe Sinai where it clearly does not mean it goes all the way back to Moshe, where the commentaries say what it means is it's a very old law. One of those examples has to do with the laws of the certain laws that take place during the Shemitah year that apply to the territories on the other side of on the other side of the Jordan. And there were certain laws that appear to have been decided by Ezra from the time of Ezra, which is still ancient. And yet the Gemara calls them halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So that means that there are some times where that phrase just means it's very old law. But in most cases, they mean the same thing as what Rabbi Breitowitz was saying would have to happen with Zera Shava, which is that it goes all the way back. There's another term which keeps on escaping me right now, that senior forgetting stuff. But sometimes this term, I don't remember, the Rambam talks about this in one of his introductions. One of the terms that's either halacha l'Moshe Sinai or the other term means that there's no argument about this going back to Moshe. Typically, the term halacha l'Moshe Sinai, it's a law to Moshe at Sinai, means it's oral law that goes all the way back to Moshe. But one of those two terms, whatever the other one is right now, it's according to the Rambam, means that it was never in dispute. It's always been the same. It's never been in dispute. So, for instance, that an esrog is a citron, or that tefillin are black. There are certain things that we have. The Torah just says pre-eitz hadar. It's the fruit of the hadar tree, but it's never been in question that this is a citron. Even when the Gemara says maybe it's this, maybe it's that, it's only doing it rhetorically. How do I know it's this and not that? It's just using a rhetorical question to get deeper into the discussion. But usually when halacha l'Moshe Sinai is used, it means that it's ancient, it's oral law that went all the way back to the beginning. But every once in a while, it could just mean it's very old law. Examples of this kind of old law are, of it going back to Sinai would be an eye for an eye, that it's not literal, it's talking about compensation. Another example is that 39 lashes, even though the Torah says 40, that it means 39 lashes. Another example would be that there are 39 categories of malachos on Shabbos. There's the when it says also shchita, that the certain elemental laws of what makes kosher shchita, because all the Torah says is you have to slaughter the animal according to the way which I told you, but the Torah doesn't ever record God telling us how to do shchita. So that's often cited as an indication of the oral law, because he said, according to the way I told you, and then it's not in the written law. So that indicates that there is an oral law that goes together with the written law. But there are certain elements that are required in order for a shechita to be successful. Those basic elements would also be that kind of law that would have had to be. There's certain ones you can intuit because you couldn't do the mitzvah without it. Like, what did tefillin even look like? How did they have tefillin? Like, so they would have had to have some oral tradition about what tefillin are and how to make them and what are the elements of them. So certainly,
so the answer they say is the oral law, that oral law was given with the written law at Sinai. Is that what they're saying?
Right. So, like, for instance, the typically the way it is explained, this is mostly in contemporary discussions. You don't find a lot of this kind of discussion in early places, but typically the way it's explained is that it's not possible to have a written explanation of everything required to do most mitzvahs. That it can't be done without an oral, like Mordechai Becher, one of his when he talks about the oral law, one of his things about the oral law, when he's talking to people about the oral law. So let's say there's somebody who says, I'm okay with the written law, my problem is with the oral law. So one of his follow-up questions to the person is, okay, why do you send your kid to college? You pay an exorbitant amount of money for your kid to go to college. Why don't you just buy them the books? Whatever books are on their reading lists, just buy them the books and you will save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the answer to that is because, the goal is that they're going to use what's written and then they're going to get mentored by professors on the rest. Because it's not possible to learn everything from books. Doctors do their book study and then they have to do their hands-on study, and it's the mentoring. Oftentimes, in almost everything we do, the hands-on mentoring is what is going to be most important in our eventually mastering whatever topic it is that we're mastering. So the typical explanation for why there has to be an oral law is that you just can't have a written manual and then put it into practice without mentoring. So the mentoring is the oral law part, and it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be something, in other words, it was intended to be oral. Even the oral transmission of it was intended to be orally transmitted because it needs that component. In other words, nowadays, even the oral law is written, and that loses if you just have the written law and the written oral law, it's still missing that component of mentorship. which and so that's why there was such concern about writing it down. It needed, because you don't want to take away the mentoring. And there are even those, I mean, this is what we were taught in yeshiva, that even when they wrote it down and made sure that it would still need mentoring. The way they wrote it down has gaps in it and stuff that would require that you still have a teacher. You still need that kind of mentoring in order to get it. So they're, whatever. So those are part of it.
I don't know why this reminds me of in A Few Good Men, when they're talking about the code red, they say, how do you know where to go to mess to eat? Is it in the code book? He says, no, we just I just follow the people to where to eat. I don't know. It just reminds me of that.
Right. I mean, but you have that with everything.
Right.
My father has a story about my father went to Northwestern, and he was in a fraternity there, and one of his fraternity mates went to law school. My father was there for undergrad. He went to Wisconsin for his graduate school, but one of his undergrad fraternity mates went to Harvard Law School, and he ended like summa cum laude from Harvard Law School, and he was, he got some clerkship with a very big judge, and then after his clerkship, he is going to now get his first job in the private sector. So this friend told my father that he had an office, he was treated with kid gloves. When they brought him in, they're giving him a fine treatment, and he has an office, he has a secretary, and the door closes on his office, and he realizes he has no idea what to do or how to do anything. He's just, and then the secretary came in, and she saw how he looked, and she goes, "Don't worry, I trained all of your bosses, and I'm going to train you too." So, yeah. All righty then. I look forward to getting a chance to learn with you guys tomorrow. I'm grateful for the chance we got today. All right. Be well.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right.
Bye-bye.